Hi everyone, welcome to the Whiteleyverse with me, Connor Whiteley, for another daily short story. Now, before I start today's story, please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you want to buy this short story and any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers and at your local bookstore and local library if you requested, and you can order paperback copies from Amazon. Now, here's today's short story. I hope you enjoyed just as much as I did writing it.
Order and routine. University lecturer Dr. Henry Oscar had never ever regretted moving to the amazing historical city of Canterbury, England, with its impressive flint Roman walls, great cobblestone high street, and wonderful student atmosphere that somehow managed to make him feel young even though he was middle-aged. Henry sat on a metal chair with a small metal table in front of him, outside his favorite little cafe on the high street. Coffee lovers might have been a small little cafe, but it was amazing, and Henry seriously loved it. He loved its bright blue, green, and pink exterior, looked so tasteful, inviting, and warming, that if he was having a bad day at the university, then all he needed to do was think about that amazing paint job and he would instantly start to feel better. There was always plenty of seating outside, and because of all the different students, adults, and young families that were almost as obsessed with the cafe as him, there was always someone new to talk with. Especially as the weird thing about being a university lecturer was that even though he did 2-hour talks every single day of the week on different areas of psychology, and he had students ask him questions, sometimes Henry just felt a little lonely because he couldn't have very deep conversations. It was great that the metal chair wasn't wobbly even though it was sitting on the cobblestone ground. The day was perfectly mild, not too hot nor cold, and the air just smelt amazing of hints of bitter coffee, caramel, and sweet spices that Henry couldn't name. This really was his idea of paradise. Henry never really sat inside the cafe until it was absolutely freezing, because Henry also liked watching all the people walking, talking, and shopping up and down the high street. Even now, Henry was rather enjoying focusing on a young couple wearing matching Christmas jumpers and black Chelsea boots as they walked along like they were on a mission. And Henry also liked focusing on a little old man and woman carrying 2 grandchildren, maybe just over a year old, looking at the massive Christmas displays in the shop windows. They really were so cute. Yet the cafe's inside was always a pleasure to go in, as it was warm, toasty, and the landscape paintings inside was just stunning. It was incredible how an artist could infuse a mere piece of canvas with such life, depth, and intrigue that if the cafe wasn't so busy all the time, then Henry just knew he would spend possibly hours staring at the paintings. Apparently, the owner, a very hot Ben Palmer, painted it at the weekends or whenever he had a spare 5 minutes. Henry had to admit Ben was extremely talented, and he had no clue why Ben was running a coffee cafe instead of painting for stunning places like the Tate Modern, and that was the only art gallery that Henry knew about. Henry wasn't exactly into art or paintings, but Ben seriously made him want to learn more. "Excuse me, dear," a little old lady said in a blue jumper as she accidentally knocked into Henry's table to get into the cafe. Henry smiled at her and really hoped she would have a good evening and night. Henry had started coming here because he needed somewhere on the high street to meet his students one day to discuss their undergraduate dissertations, and he wanted to be nice to them so the students didn't have to walk so far from their accommodation up to campus. It really had been love at first sight because Henry really enjoyed the cafe, the atmosphere, and the coffee they did here. But it seriously had been the hot owner that had made Henry keep coming back again and again. Ben was about the same age as Henry, and Henry had always considered himself to be in good shape, but Ben's body was just amazing. Ben might have always worn a tight white shirt, baggy black jeans, and his handsome face was always smiling, but Henry could just tell how much Ben worked out, and he had to be seriously toned under that t-shirt. Henry would have loved to test that theory himself, but he just wasn't sure. He had spoken to Ben most days, and he always made sure that both of them spoke for at least 5-10 minutes before he left, but he wasn't sure if Ben was into men or he was interested in him. But as Henry's mother, brother and best friends had constantly mentioned recently, he was pushing 45, and he was still single, living alone, and hadn't had a single boyfriend in over a year. It wasn't like Henry was trying to be single, and he was on the dating apps. He went to the gay clubs in Canterbury at times, and he did try to seek out other gay members of staff at the university. Yet all of that came with very mixed results. So Henry had decided to come here today to make a change and plot how he was going to get a boyfriend, because his current methodology clearly wasn't working for him. Normally, Henry liked to live his life under a strict routine and order because it had helped him get to university, live his successful life, and helped him. But clearly something in his routine wasn't helping him find a boyfriend, fall in love, and enjoy the pleasures of a man. He needed to change that today. Henry got out a massive file from his black rucksack that he always carried about him with, and he placed it gently on the little round metal table. "Your order, dear sir." Henry just grinned like a silly schoolboy when he heard his beautiful, sexy Ben behind him as he came over and sat a small tray on the table. Henry absolutely loved it that Ben remembered what he always ordered, again, another part of the routine and order. Ben always made the best cappuccino, coffee cake, and little latte-flavored biscuits that Henry couldn't get enough of. Yet Henry couldn't understand why there was an extra cup of tea on the tray. He didn't like tea too much, but he grinned even more as Ben sat down opposite him and took a mouthful out of the mug. "What's all this, doctor?" Ben asked. Henry almost felt embarrassed and ashamed to mention that he was trying to reorganize his life, but he never ever wanted to lie to such a beautiful man. "I'm trying to find a boyfriend, and something in my current routine is failing me in that department," Henry said, smiling. Ben just grinned and shook his head. "You've had a lot of student meetings today, haven't you?" Henry playfully leant over the table and hit Ben on the head. He hated it that Ben knew what he was like after certain things because of how he spoke. "Yeah," Henry said. "Had to deal with a lot of tears because deadlines are coming up and some students, well, aren't very organized." Ben gestured to the file. "Clearly no one is as organized as you, but it suits you. You look really good in your professor mode." Henry laughed. He didn't have a professor mode. He was a lecturer, sure, but he didn't like to think of himself as an uptight lecturer. "Why don't you look around here for a boyfriend?" Ben asked, gesturing to the cafe. "There are probably plenty of cute guys wanting to talk to you if you only realized they were there." Henry shrugged. It was a good point, but it was a coffee cafe at the end of the day. He couldn't imagine there would be that many gay people wanting or flocking to here, regardless of how great and out of this world the coffee, cakes, and biscuits were. Ben took another mouthful of his tea. "Fine, what sort of man do you want? Maybe I know someone like that." Henry grinned. He had never really thought about a man this way before, but it was fun to imagine. "I don't know. I would love a man in a tight white shirt, black trousers, and fluffy hair to come up to me and start flirting with me. It's just a fantasy, but that would be fun." Ben just smiled, and it was such a beautiful one, and it was such a shame that Henry wasn't gay at all. Ben was too beautiful, sexy, and perfect to be gay, but that was just the story of Henry's life. Constantly falling for men he couldn't have. Ben finished off his tea quickly and wished Henry to have a good evening and night, and he went back to his cafe, but not before gently rubbing Henry's back. Henry had no clue what that gesture meant, but he had loved the warmth, chemistry, and sheer pleasure that flooded through him at the touch. Henry just wished he could find a man just like that. Henry sort of realized that the thing that could be stopping him from meeting other hot men was that he always spent an hour at the Coffee Lovers Cafe every weekday without fail, and that was an extra hour that he could be using to meet men. So Henry was going to go to the cafe and see if he really needed to go here every single weekday. It was more like testing a theory more than anything else, and of course it would be amazing to see beautiful Ben again. Henry sat in a very similar metal chair to yesterday, but this one was a little wobbly on the cold cobblestone path, and there weren't a lot of other people sitting outside, because of the sheer drop in temperature. The only other people outside were a middle-aged straight couple wearing black puffer jackets, shaking so much they were making the chairs rattle. The air was cold, crisp, and slightly damp, so much so that the attractive young woman coming out of the cafe to take Henry's order shivered. Henry looked through the massive glass windows to the inside of the cafe and couldn't understand why a young woman was coming out to take his order when Ben knew it off by heart, and Henry actually couldn't see Ben inside. That wasn't like him at all. "Are you Henry?" the young woman asked. Henry slowly nodded, because he had never been recognized before, and she certainly wasn't one of his students. "Good," the young woman said. "I've been told to look after you by the boss man. He must really like you, and I can understand why." It was only then that Henry realized that the young woman was really eyeing him up and down, even though he was very much old enough to be her dad. "It's okay, love," Ben said as he pulled us a chair next to Henry, and Henry realized that Ben hadn't been at the cafe, he had only just arrived. Henry was about to ask what was going on and why Ben was calling his employee love, when he just smiled. Ben looked absolutely amazing in his tight white shirt that looked so crisp and really failed to hide how amazing his body was underneath. His black trousers left little to the imagination, and wow, Ben's hair just looked stunning. Ben really was the most beautiful man Henry had ever seen. And Henry's wayward parts agreed too. "Is this place any good, cutie?" Ben asked. Henry just smiled. He presumed Ben was trying to flirt with him, but no one had ever done this to him before. Henry didn't know what to do, so he tried to play along. "It's okay, I suppose," Henry said, grinning. "I only really come here for the hot owner. Do you know him?" Ben shrugged. "I suppose the Ben dude's hot and all, but I'm better, cuter, and a lot better in bed." Henry gasped and laughed when Ben looked so embarrassed. Ben laughed even harder and just put his hands in his face. Henry leant over the table and rubbed his cold hands a little. "Should we get out of here and have a real conversation?" Henry asked in, between laughing at the beautiful man that had failed casual flirting so badly. "You really want to go on a date after how forward I was?" Ben asked. Henry just looked at him. Henry couldn't imagine how someone wouldn't want to go on a date with such a cute, handsome, and sexy man that was willing to embarrass himself just to get another guy's attention. Henry stood and took Ben by the hand and grinned like the little schoolboy he felt like at that moment. "Nothing would make me happier than going on a date with you, and hopefully more than one," Henry said. Ben pretended to look skeptical, but Henry could just tell that Ben was delighted, excited, and more than happy. And Henry understood it too. As Henry and Ben went down the little cobblestone high street, hand in hand, Henry really did feel like the happiest and luckiest man alive, because after months of pining and interest in stunning Ben, he was finally going to go on a date. And Henry already knew the date was going to be fine, and would hopefully lead to many more wonderful things, not just at this magical, snowy time of year, but into the future too.
Welcome back everyone, it's me again, Connor Whiteley. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's story, because I flat out love writing, creating stories and sharing them with you. If you really enjoyed today's story, then please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithms. And if you want to buy this short story or any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers, and you can get them from your local library if you requested, and you can order the paperback copies from Amazon, your local bookstore or local library if you request it. Lastly, if you want to support the channel on a one-off basis, then you can now buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Connor Whiteley. Also, if you know anyone who would enjoy today's story, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help us spread the word about the channel. So, thanks for watching the Whiteleyverse, and I'll see you again soon. Have a great day, everyone.